Hello and welcome back. I'm Karjan and this is Let's Art Operation Blinking Mirror. When last we left off, I was cleaning up these trees and contemplating the practicality of carnivorous Venus flytrap style trees. I do find the idea rather interesting. The very thought that, you could make something that you tend to see as so very peaceful. We tend to think of trees as, safe and neat, fun to climb in, stuff like that. Until they, get struck by lightning and fall on our houses and crush our cars and, all those other things that gigantic masses of life actually do to our carefully constructed world when they finally get blown over or ripped out of the ground or similar. But I don't think I would want to climb in a carnivorous tree, especially if it had some method of going after mammals, especially slow mammals. I'm not entirely sure how it could pull something like that off. I've been considering it, and I might end up using the concept of carnivorous trees in some sort of writing piece that I do for fun. Because the idea just seems really cool to me now. But I'm not entirely sure how I would have the trees pull it off. I mean, I know there's versions in books and the like that have the trees with moving and have vines that quickly grow and move to wrap around things. But I'm not entirely sure I like those concepts. And I suppose they're fine, but it just seems to me that's just a little bit too fantastical, I suppose. I mean, they worked quite well in the stories that I read, because I had already suspended my disbelief far enough that seeing trees thrash around like that wasn't really that big of a deal. But I'm not entirely sure. Well, that's an interesting thought. I just had a thought that a tree could specifically grow with like a den sort of thing down here, so that it could effectively tempt small animals like foxes or badgers or whatever small burrowing mammals would be in the area. And it would be right next to their roots. so the creatures would go make a den in this conveniently open hole, and it would close up during the night. And then it would kind of, roots would end up growing into the space and would eventually trap and grow into the body of the creature. What a way to go. That is kind of creepy. But I think it would work. Just kind of a trap creature like that. A trap plant. I mean, obviously it wouldn't really suffice for, it wouldn't suffice in the same way that the Venus flytraps. I mean, there's a reason that Venus flytraps stay somewhat small, and that they have to be carnivorous. It's because of the soil that they grow in isn't very nutritious, so they have to look to other sources for the nutrients that they need. So this hypothetical mammal-eating tree wouldn't really be able to survive in sort of the same places that, say, a Venus flytrap would, especially if it grew large. But it would be able to survive, say, on the borderlands of that area where, like, the soil becomes just slightly incapable of supporting plants the same way. So you get trees with pitcher plant things in the crooks of their branches, and Venus flytrap style leaves, and mammal eating areas around their roots. And I think they would need all of those adaptations from small to large in order to properly thrive in an area. Or maybe there would be 3 types of trees. One with the Venus flytrap style leaves. One with probably a symbiosis with a pitcher plant, with a type of pitcher plant, such that the pitcher plant isn't actually part of the tree, but it grows with the tree, and the tree feeds it, and it feeds part of the tree. So you've got a symbiosis going on. And then you've got the third type of tree that eats mammals. Because I like the idea of eating mammals. Well, I like the idea of a tree eating mammals. It satisfies some devious little part of my soul. It's kind of a cool idea. wonder what other ways a tree could choose to eat a meal. If they're not just symbiotic, or not just photosynthesis and roots. I mean, there's already trees that eat other trees, sort of. And they're not really eating other trees, they're just parasites on trees. They're trees that are parasitic, although it's usually parasitic vines that latch onto trees and then strangle them to death. And other plants. Lots of other plants. The plant kingdom is not as passive and nice as we always thought it was. It's actually rather cruel and violent when you actually take a close look at it. I mean, you've got parasitic vines that devour, that strangle the life from their hosts, and then you have vampiric vines that latch onto their host and basically drain them of sap. And then you've got plants like the pitcher plant and the Venus flytrap that eat insects and whatever else falls into their pitchers or lands in their traps. And then you've got plants that are capable of poisoning, that are perfectly unpoisonous, perfectly non-poisonous, and then they start being attacked by bugs, and then they decide to poison the bugs that are eating them. So they start producing a chemical, but they don't produce the chemical until they know that they're being attacked. And then there are plants that summon birds and other insects for help with their bug problems. It's just the plant kingdom looks so peaceful and calm and nice. And then you've got these other scientists saying, well, yes, everything looks stately, but as soon as this tree over here gets attacked, it's sending out a signal, and all the other trees in the vicinity of the same type start producing, you know, this toxin or that toxin. Or they start producing a chemical that summons the predators of the bug that's attacking them. And that's just fascinating to me. The fact that there's so much communication going on in a kingdom that we previously thought to be basically silent. And yet it turns out that they're doing a lot more communicating than we ever thought possible. So a tree being carnivorous is not something that I will say is absolutely impossible, because there's far too much out there. I mean, there may not be any real carnivorous trees on our planet, but it's still a relatively feasible concept. You have to take into account, you know, the size of the tree and the size of everything else that it's eating, as to whether or not it would have enough nutrients out of that sort of meal. But if it's just using that to supplement, then you neatly sidestep the problem of whether it could survive on that sort of meal. I think I'm actually going to cut it here instead of going down that far. Just thin it out like that. There we go. So let's get this cleaned up. So yeah, that's the type of science that I tend to keep my eyes on. You know, discovering what's going on in the animal kingdom, what's going on in the plant kingdom. Oops, there we go. I may not be able to do the research myself, but I like to know what's going on, because I find almost all science very interesting. I find a lot of things very interesting. From science to art to literature. I don't really care for the insistence that we must find a meaning in everything that we read, that literature majors and English majors and the like tend to, especially English teachers, tend to attempt to pound into your head. I mean, sometimes a blue curtain is just a blue curtain. But I know that, you know, there will always be those who look for hidden meanings in things, and always look for symbolism in words and literature and actions. We're a highly symbolic race. There is no denying that. And so it's very useful to know what cultures feel about, excuse me, what cultures feel about certain symbols, because all cultures are slightly different. We do not have a unified collection of symbolism. There is no unified symbolism in our world. You know, to English and Americans and the like, you have things like red is anger and blood and all sorts of things like that. And then you go over into the Asian countries, and I vaguely recall that red over there is happiness, and it's a good color. And I think there's some culture over there wears it at weddings and the like, whereas we see white as the color of weddings, and another culture sees white as the color of death. So there is no universal symbolism. So you just need to do your research and look up what things are. And I think you need to do that you need to do that about your culture and about writing. If you're going to write, you need to look up what your own culture thinks about things, because your personal symbolism is probably slightly different from popular symbolism. And that could make, if you're trying to make a message, that could make the message completely different from what you initially thought it would be. So there's always research to do. There's always research to do, no matter what you're into. I still don't like it. And I don't like attempting to actively find the symbolism in things. It's just not fun. I've never enjoyed it. I would rather enjoy the story. It's probably why my English teachers and I never really got along. They wanted to continually read into things, and I wanted to just read and enjoy. So close to finishing this bit up. I am very much looking forward to adding colors. It's always one of my favorite parts, just being able to splash colors on the screen. Because that's when a piece of art really comes alive, I think. Is that moment when you can add color, and it just comes alive. At least in my opinion. This is kind of a crooked branch. Oh well. let's see. Being a bit too sharp with my edges. You can definitely tell when I stop bracing my hand properly, because I lose my ability to control the cursor quite as well. I don't have as steady of a hand as I probably should. You know, my hand doesn't jitter much. But I don't really have a steady hand. It's just never been a thing that I really practiced when I was younger. And while I'm pretty sure that I could manage to learn to hold my hand steady enough without bracing it constantly. I don't think I really have the patience to do so. I lack patience in many things. Okay, back to over here. And as soon as I finish these lines, I need to go and I need to quickly outline the other two trees in the background. Although I'm probably not... I don't think I'm actually going to outline them. I think I'm just going to edit the lines that are currently there. And then I will... I'll just have that layer end up being really kind of faded. So that it's the color of the trees that is noticeable. This. Move around over there. Clean it off. I am just pulling shapes out of whole cloth. Doing whatever I feel generally tends to look good. I'm also doing this fairly quick. A little bit quicker than I'm used to. But I'm getting a bit excited, so I'm getting a bit sloppy. I'm also getting impatient. Definitely impatient. And impatient isn't exactly a bad thing, so long as you make sure that you still, whoops. So long as you make sure that you still allow yourself some time once you've finished to step away from your piece and then come back later, so that you can make sure that you haven't really damaged anything in your impatience. And I don't really want to take that moment to step away, but I'm going to do it anyway as soon as I finish the lines. Okay, clean that up a little bit more. Just a little bit left of this tree, just a little more. I keep telling myself that. Almost done. Almost done. I'm also starting to grip my pen harder, which means that my thumb is starting to bother me. So I'm going to need to take a nice long break of doing nothing with my hand for a bit. Maybe an hour or so. And then I'll come back and finish up the background trees. But I do want to finish this tree before... So I've only got this part up here, so let's get this done. Let's get this done and out of the way. And then it's just the background trees. And then the final few steps with the lines before I get to coloring. I'm not entirely sure that I like this split that I put here, and I think it'll really depend upon how I end up coloring it, whether I really like it or not. But for now, I'm going to keep it as sort of a, you know, the lightning hit the tree and split it open, and then the two halves just grew up themselves into two different treetops. At least that's what happened with the tree in my yard. It had two tops. Okay. That looks a sight better. So there's a bunch of the art. Now I just need to finish up those. I guess I will probably outline them with the proper brushes, because it will make it easier to give it the proper effects if I do. Yeah, I'll just really quick outline them, and then, I mean, a significant amount of it will be actually covered by leaves. Like, there'll be leaves all up in here, and some leaves over here, leaves up here. It's a very upright tree, so I don't think there will be leaves, you know, branches drooping down. That's another type of tree. I don't tend to whoops. I don't tend to draw the drooping trees. Oh well. It's starting to look much better than that initial sketch that I had. That's the plan anyway, and the hope. So I'm going to cut this off now, and I'm going to take a break and come back to this in a little while. I will see you next time.